These are 10 of roughly 40 watercolors that I did for the yards. I call them sort of color storyboards. The idea of these is to give the director of photography a complete sense of what it is that you have in mind for the image on the screen. And some of them are very, very close to the image that's in the movie, and some of them are not close at all. But if they're not close at all, it's because what happens is that you get contributions from others that make it better.
For me, as a DP, they were amazing to have a reference that was very specific, yet his own for the movie.
I'll take you down, motherfucker!
This first one is from the sequence in the yards. I had wanted this to be a kind of, yes, it's blue, which is not much blue in the movie, but a kind of almost a kind of a warm blue. In other words, I've mixed in a bit of yellow. It's almost a kind of greenish blue, and this is also to emphasize the kind of the frame in that both of the characters are in a way subservient to the environment around them. The color aspect is so crucial that I may not succeed, but I'm trying to use specific color schemes as a tool, as a means to an emotional response. So if this is to succeed, then I have to communicate to the director of photography, the editor, and the production designer what it is I have in mind. So I feel like it's the only way to go. This watercolor is of a moment in the film where Joaquin Phoenix is telling Mark Wahlberg that he has to go try and kill the police officer because the police officer is going to be able to finger him. But as you can see, all I did was use the color yellow to paint his face, the light on his face, and the back of his head. And you know, I do a little bit of cheating with the brown sky, which makes very little sense. But the idea was always to endorse this idea, this color scheme. And you'll see in the film, his face looks almost like it's made of bronze.
I feel like I'm gonna fucking die.
In describing what James wanted the look of the yards to be, he had a phrase that he kept talking about, and that was something he called the voluptuousness of death.
We talked a lot about trying to give the picture a kind of beautiful, voluptuous, we called it, voluptuous look, kind of yellow ochres and buttery yellows and burnt siennas and burnt umbers, a series of browns and yellows that were a kind of almost soothing in their beauty.
On one day we had lunch, and he wanted to show me what the voluptuousness of death meant to him, and he took me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan, and he specifically went to certain rooms where there were certain paintings.
The painters that we looked at Rembrandt and Caravaggio and Georges de la Tour. The painter was a French painter. You know, he specialized in candlelight, and you see that all over the movie, especially in the first 10 minutes. We looked really at the painters whose work, well, to be honest, was often quite dark. And even though it was dark, it was very emotional. It wasn't distancing. And we thought, well, how is it that these guys were able to achieve that kind of deeply personal, emotional experience, even though the idea behind the work was so tragic? It didn't repel you, it brought you in. So we were thinking, well, how is it that we can get that same effect?
In my mind, the voluptuousness of death represents was a warmth in the light, a quality in the black, and an ominousness to the images that we were looking at that were the catalyst to the look of the yards, what became the benchmark for me to go after. And I it was great. I had to, that was my job now. And it was very defined, and I knew what I had to go for. And based on those images, I started testing and trying to get the film to look like the movie he wanted to have made.
This is when Mark Wahlberg's character Leo approaches the electric rail building where James Caan works. And the idea behind this painting was that I think I stole a bit of this from a comic book, if memory serves me correctly. But what I did was this huge building would overwhelm this young man, and the idea is that this corporation and the powers that be and the power structure was larger than these individual people and their ability to control their own lives. This is a painting from the sequence in the yards, which is the ending of the fight between Mark Wahlberg and Joaquin Phoenix.
Fuck me, Will! Fuck me!
What I tried to emphasize here in the painting was to have the skin almost look like it was bronze, as if you had put like gold paint on his face or something. The warm colors to be as a counterbalance to the coldness and the tragedy of the story.
Well, it's great to work with James because of his energy, his enthusiasm, the depth of his knowledge, and it's really interesting to be with someone who understands why things should look the way they should look. There's a reason for everything that he seems to do, from the cardboard boxes in the room to the color of the light. It just is inspiring and makes you want to work harder and do the best work you can.
This corresponds almost exactly to a shot in the film that we wound up doing. And here's one of the rare moments where we used a kind of cooler green. And we chose this cool green color because it was in direct contrast to the rest of the movie. And this was a moment that had to be in direct contrast to the movie because he's being forced to kill someone. So the visual message that we tried to send was not a warm message, but in fact that this was a kind of almost had a fluorescent brutality to it.
I've grown to believe that cinematography is about capturing reality. And in reality, people aren't lit. There's no one walking around your house putting the light in the right place for you. You stand in front of a lamp and you're dark. You stand in a dark hallway and the kitchen's lit behind you in the background. You're dark. You're in silhouette. So my approach to lighting now is to light these spaces, light the rooms, and let people inhabit them as they would in real life.
People read images very quickly these days, and they need very little to look at before they get the information that the shot is presenting. And in this movie, that's not really how we went about it. The shots have much more information the longer you hold on them. One of my favorite scenes in the film is Leo saying goodbye to his mother, and he comes in to get a bag out of the room, and there's a master there it's stunning. It's unbelievably beautiful, and there's a little bit of a delay going into the coverage there, just enough to let that composition have its meaning.
And Harris did a brilliant job in translating this into what the movie finally wound up looking like, which is almost a single source light from another room. But here is all the principles we talked about. There's a kind of a warm green, a tremendous part of the frame which is just black. And then we have yellow and brown and the kind of the red of her hair and the yellowness of the skin. All of this endorsing a kind of warmth and inviting, beautiful, tender image. Not a very cold, brutal, unforgiving one, but a very tender one, because the story was already so brutal and unforgiving that this would be a way to draw the viewer in.
Is your mother up there?
What are you doing here? Want to get caught?
This is when Mark Wahlberg comes to see his mother, and he's hiding in the alleyway, and he talks to Charlize Theron. For some reason, I feel like this last watercolor that we're going to look through today, this is Perhaps one of the most important that I did in establishing the look of the film. Again, all the visual ideas are in principle here. The tremendous negative space, which is in the darkness, the kind of the yellow ochre side wall, which was from the sodium vapor lamps of the street lamps. And you notice his face. You don't see his eyes. It's like he's been lit from above with a very dim street lamp. Almost, we really wanted to mimic the look of natural light source, which would be a sodium vapor street light, and how the intense mystery created by lighting where you can't see a character's eyes can be tremendously dramatically effective. When you can't see an actor's eyes, it creates a tremendous dramatic tension for the audience. Why can't we see him? They really want to struggle to look inside the character. If you say the eyes are the window to the soul, and if you can't see the eyes, you can imagine what that means.
I can't imagine that movie looking any other way, or that movie, those people being in a bright white kitchen, and it having the same impact.
What I'm trying to do only in the movies is just communicate my own emotional ideas, my own emotional reactions to things. And why are the movies so dark that I've done? I don't know. It's you make the movies and they're part of who you are. They're not the whole me. I don't spend my life, in dark brown rooms or whatever. But it's part of me, I guess. And in a weird way, it's part of me that I'm not even connected to, because I don't spend my time being really glum. So it's obviously part of my unconscious that needs to get out.